Here.
Aye.
So let's start with this, shall we? It's been announced that ambulance workers will join nurses in taking strike action next month in what will be the biggest NHS walkout dispute. Today, as we've seen, thousands of nurses are on strike at more than 55 NHS trusts in England in their second and final day of industrial action this week. So, is this the most concerning day we've seen so far?
I think so. It's certainly one of the biggest walkouts of the NHS in its history, and there are the junior doctors potentially to come. They're balloting for strike action as well. So the chances are that we're going to see a repeat of the kind of disruption that happened in December when nurses walked out. A reported 30,000 operations, appointments pushed back. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of worry for people. But at the same time, of course, this pay dispute doesn't seem like it's going to be resolved anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, the GMB, the General Trade Union, National Secretary Rachel Harrison said ambulance workers are angry. Our message to the government is clear. Talk pay now. How much talk do we think is actually going on? Because the government have made it clear that this is just unaffordable. So, essentially, strike as much as you like, but we can't pay you what you're asking for, although the entire country knows how much they deserve. So where does the money come from? Can the money be found before this happens? And is there enough talking going on?
Well, I have a good suggestion. King Charles has announced today that they've had a windfall from the income of their wind farm, and he's wanting to free some of that money up.
That's billions over 3 years, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And actually it amounts to, I believe, 25% of what the Treasury, or, you know, it then becomes part of the, I forgot what it's called, the sovereign...
The sovereign wealth.
Yes, exactly. So maybe some of that could be pushed that way. I think there is money somewhere. There's also an announcement today with this Levelling Up Fund, which is great. You know, there's the new Eden project that's going to be opened up in Morecambe. Surely there is money somewhere that we can find, because this is, as much as it's great to boost economy, boost tourism, boost these things or whatever else, we need our NHS. They're in desperate need. These are people who, it is a vocation for them. They're not choosing this. They do not want to be striking. I do question the wisdom of this sort of double attack, if you like, of choosing the same day. Just to be clear, though, they legally have to provide emergency care, although we've already heard stories where there's, you know, the ambulances aren't turning up and you know.
Well, I mean, I think that from the government side of view, they always have said, if we increase wages now, we could be furthering the effect of inflation. It will just drive prices up because there's more money sloshing around. So one worries that we're now getting into a bit of a race here between inflation coming down quickly, and it is starting to come down, versus the effect of these strike actions. So is the government really going to try and hold the line to the point where inflation... Exactly, to sit it out to the point where inflation keeps falling and then the demands for pay might start to go off. But the reality is ambulance service has been up the Swanee for quite a long time, and nurses and teachers and ambulance do need a pay rise.
Well, the word that you used there a number of times on most people's lips is inflation. And the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has been mocked. He's been called Chancellor Bean over a social media video in which he uses coffee cups to explain inflation. So before we go into this, you know, politicians don't make the greatest presenters, but make your own mind up as to whether or not this actually actively explains what the issue is, or whether this was an own goal.
Hi, can I get a flat white, please? Of course. While my coffee is being made, let me tell you what we're doing to halve inflation. I'm afraid coffee is getting more expensive. A year ago, it would have been around £2.50, but now it's gone up to nearly £3 a cup. There are lots of reasons why inflation has risen. One of them is COVID. Another is Putin's invasion of Ukraine, which pushed global gas prices to their highest ever level. And all that means that the price of a cup of coffee has gone up.
Does it explain it? Does it make it worse?
I think it does explain it. Am I completely on my own with this? I mean, like, I'm quite a visual learner. I can understand, like, it looks a bit like he's like, oh, I've had my coffee, and then I'm going to turn to the camera. It feels a little bit awkward, but the actual understanding of how that works...
It was a little bit of the walk.
It's stilted, isn't it?
But it's trying. Maybe, you know, I think it went on their TikTok. TikTok is a different audience, possibly, to what us who are sitting here now. You know, if you put that on, like, a news round and I was younger, I'd have gone, oh, yeah, I understand what that means.
I agree, and they didn't break the bank with their props there, that's for sure. And he's been called much worse things than Chancellor Bean. I think that it's actually, I think it's all right. I think it could have been done in a better way. That's not, he didn't I doubt he decided to let's write. I'm going to write COVID on a cup, and there we go. I think it's all right. I think we just he's an easy person to.
It's got all the hallmarks of someone's come back from the Christmas holidays and gone, right, I've got a great idea, I know what we can do, we need to do this. And they've done it, and it's a bit wooden, bit stilted. But actually, as you say, they're not television presenters. They're in the weeds, in the details.
Yeah.
What do we expect? What do we really want? Do we want bells and whistles, huge production
Fix
value,
it.
you know,
That's what we
loads
want.
of props?
We want them to fix it. We
Well,
don't need a coffee demonstration.
Just to pick up on something you said a moment ago, and it's worth mentioning because it is quite an interesting prospect, and that is the King's decision to say that the money that would have gone to the Crown Estate would go back into public funds.
Yeah.
For a new king, very forward-thinking, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that has to be, as you say, that's a big income for somewhere.
Yeah. And I think this is in line with, obviously, his speech. He said he wanted to free up more of that money, and this is here as an example. So these offshore wind farms do actually make a lot of money. And he's talking about they've just had a windfall for the wind farms. And rightly so. He's saying, well, we need to share some of this profit in a more public-focused way. And I think that is right. And I think as much as we'd all like, as I said before, you know, these different projects, what are the most desperate causes that we have in the UK today? And I would say the NHS.
I wonder if that should be the model for all of the Crown Estate, if it does make money on top of what they take for the funding of the palaces and everything like that. Actually, I think that's the way forward, isn't it? Because questions about the future of the monarchy have arisen, as we've discussed many times. Maybe that's one way of saying, look, we are helping, we are giving back, we are
Maybe
trying
to say
our best
rather than throw this into the public funds and it goes wherever it goes and you don't know where it's going to go, is to say, right, OK, well, the Crown Estates will, because there's nothing bigger in the public interest than public health and the public health service and the National Health Service, is to say, right, well, that's where it's going to go. It's going to go directly into the NHS.
Then you come to that question about inflation again. So that, I guess, would worry the government.
Yeah,
Hang on, the King's
that's a good point.
deciding he's paying for the... And then if the government's argument has always been, actually, this is going to increase inflation, do they have a... You can imagine Rishi Sunak sitting down with the King and saying, have you worried enough about inflation, Your Majesty?
Let me get the coffee cups.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me
It's nice to
explain
hear
how it
about
works.
sustainable energy making such a huge profit.
Quite,
though.
yeah.
Like, how brilliant is that? Let's move on to another story now. The Church of England bishops have refused to back a change in teaching to allow priests to marry same-sex couples after 6 years of consultations and months of deliberations between church leaders. Bishops have said they will not change the Church's fundamental teaching that holy matrimony is between one man and one woman for life. They debated that for 6 years.
6 years to say no. I mean,
Wow.
I have strong opinions on this, and Scotland in May last year, the General Assembly voted that they could have... the ministers could choose to marry same-sex couples. And I just don't see why. I mean, the teachings of the Bible have progressed in terms of other things that are in the Bible that we wouldn't agree with, slavery, etc., and other obias and isms. And I don't see why they can't. I mean, you were saying that obviously there are gay clergymen
Absolutely.
who can carry out the ceremony.
Absolutely.
But then how can they not get married? If they're Christian, they're teaching Christianity, but yet they are not allowed to be married themselves to a same-sex partner.
Doesn't
make
any
sense.
Doesn't make any... Imagine being Christian, gay, and either in the church or going to a church. I think you'd end up feeling like a second-class Christian, wouldn't you? If you were constantly told by your church, oh, no, sorry, not you.
Yeah.
How
And,
difficult is that?
and what does this do for a younger population? Obviously, church numbers declining. I think it's less than 1% go to church on a Sunday. It just looks like a bunch of out-of-touch dinosaurs.
Absolutely.
It's not like there isn't a good religious reason to allow this to happen, you know. Love others as they wish to be treated.
Shouldn't
There's all
religion be
sorts-
inclusive?
Well,
I
there's all
totally
sorts
agree.
of ways of managing the theological debate in the church about the rights and wrongs of the morality of it. There's loads of ways. As you say, they've changed to allow gay people
it's
to come
changing
into the
one
church.
word. I think in Scotland they've changed one word from man and wife to parties or something like that. That's as simple as it is. You know, my ex-husband's married to a man. We're all great friends. I love him. I love his husband. And they kind of eloped to get married. I'd have loved to have have given him away. I'd have walked him up the aisle, you know. And I think we do need to. We are in a world now where it's more, you know, it's talked about more openly. It should be accepted. Love is love, and I think they're completely wrong. And the fact it took them 6 years to then come up and say no, it's like, come on.
And the fact that you want to keep, you know, if you want this sense of this incredible. So I've got a friend of mine who's very, very religious and gets an enormous amount of support and